businesses, and especially our commuters and taxpayers. Witness last year's painful corporate transit fee. And I might add, that is in sharp contrast. We dealt within the four walls of New Jersey with a very challenging fiscal reality that, again, is not unique to New Jersey, but we're also not immune. As in contrast to the MTA's answer, which is to rip off New Jersey commuters going into Manhattan. We chose to solve that challenge within our four walls, and we will this one as well. But I, for one, refuse to pass the buck or increase taxes on hard-working New Jerseyans for the same or even more likely reduced service. That's not going to happen. That is untenable. And the truth is, we can deliver a fair contract to every New Jersey Transit employee without abandoning our hardworking neighbors. And let me be clear, this is also about reaching a solution that sets the next administration up for success. The contract being negotiated at this moment is about the long-term future of NJ Transit well after I leave office. Literally a tiny fraction of any deal that we reach will impact our remaining 8 months. And the easy play for Chris and for me is to just cave, fold, and kick this thing down the road. And we're not doing that. So we're holding the line for the next governor and the next administration so they do not inherit a NJ Transit that is on the brink of fiscal collapse, but is in fact in a strong state of health. That is what it means to fix NJ Transit, leaving the agency in better shape in every respect, but especially in fiscal terms, than when we entered office. I was asked last night if I still stuck by my statement, we'll fix NJ Transit if it kills me. And the fact of the matter is, I apologize, facts matter here. That's exactly what we've been doing for the past 7+ years, and especially over the past 5 or 6 months since Chris has been at the helm. The stance that we're taking to get a fair deal for our workers and not blow up NJ Transit's finances is exactly a central tenet in fixing NJ Transit. If you look at our on-time performance, I should have put an asterisk on my commitment, but for the fact of what Amtrak is up to. If you look at on-time performance over the past 16 months, especially on the recent months on the non-Amtrak lines, it's mid to high 90%. Even on the Amtrak lines, it is regularly in the mid to upper 80%. We mentioned last night, I think the board approved 250 new double-level, two-level rail cars this week. That brings the total to 400. We'll have an entirely new fleet when all of that comes into fruition. We'll have a new locomotive fleet. I think you guys approved the board 12 this week, 12 new locomotives. We've got new train stations in Lyndhurst, Elizabeth. The Portal North Bridge is nearing completion. Many other stations. The facts, I apologize, let's not let the facts get in the way. We've had bumps in the road. Last summer, particularly last June, was unacceptable. This is a bump in the road. Chris will walk you through how we're dealing with it. But the trajectory is undeniable. And again, I wish Amtrak could punch at their weight, and the trajectory would be even more compelling. So back to today, what the people of New Jersey need right now is for the members of the BLET to step up and meet their obligations to the public. Let's end this strike, as we just said to a couple of their good members a few minutes ago. Our doors are open. We are ready to restart negotiations literally this second. But we need the BLET to come back to the negotiating table in good faith. Our doors are open. They will remain open. I thank you for coming out on short notice. And with that, please help me welcome the President and CEO of NJ Transit, Chris Calori. Chris.
Thank you, Governor. Thank you for your continued leadership. And I know this moment of a strike is what any one of us wanted to see. But that is where we find ourselves. But I want to sort of frame today's discussion picking up on where the governor left off on a couple of points. One, when the strike went into effect last night at 12:01, we worked very methodically to put the railroad to bed, use the railroad language, to make sure every train car that we had safely got to its destination. Customers were let out, and the train cars were parked in yards where they're supposed to be. This morning, we also ensured not only that our customers had real-time information by having people at train stations who can answer the questions of customers, but to also make sure our bus lines that are now fully operational are picking up passengers there where they need to be on time and move them efficiently. There are a couple of lines where we have seen some overcrowding, not to a point where people have been standing in lines, but we have been able to resource those lines properly to make sure, again, we handle the volume that is out there. That is important because this goes to a bit of what the governor talked about. He said from the very beginning, he hopes for the best, but what? That we're planning for the worst. That is what we're doing, and we intend to do it. Our promise to our customers is we understand this is not where you want it to be either, but my job at the governor's direction is to make sure we solve problems as they appear. That is my commitment, and we will do that today, we'll do that tonight, we'll do that every day the union decides to be on strike. That is our commitment. Second, I want to pivot to this issue the governor talked about, which is very, very important, and let me try to contextualize it this way. Just a couple of weeks ago, a national newspaper said that transit agencies around the country are in a financial death spiral. These are their words. It was in the headline. What does that mean? Almost every transit agency in this region, you don't even have to go far away to the West Coast, but you can. What you'll find uniformly is every transit agency, not just SEPTA, but MTA. MTA has a $400 million deficit this year and next year. SEPTA, the governor mentioned, have massive financial problems because of some of these bad practices that go back years, if not decades. We, for the first time in 45 years, thanks to the governor and the legislature, first time in 45 years, we are finally on stable financial footing. That has never happened before. Just when we are in a position to say we have put this agency on a course towards fiscal stability, we now are confronted with this existential problem, which is what? Which is the unions are saying, give us a fair deal, that sounds about right, no matter what the cost. Well, that second part is where we're all hung up on. This is not about not giving them a fair wage. It's about how do you do it in a fiscally responsible manner that doesn't bankrupt New Jersey Transit and puts it on a debt spiral like every other mass transit agency. That's the governor's only objective, and that's my only objective. It would be politically expedient, easy almost, for us to say, let somebody else handle the problem. But he made the hard decision in this budget, and the budgets, previous budgets, to say we're not doing what other folks have done. That's what this is all about. We, the governor and I, just had a chance to meet with the locomotive engineers who were out there just a few minutes ago. They were gracious to us. You know what they said to us? They want to get back to work. That's great. We want them to get back to work too. But we said to them, we want to get back to the work, but we want to make sure you continue to work, because what's the point in giving you a pay raise if a couple of years from now your job is not going to exist? That's sort of what we're talking about in the most plain and simple terms. So we are committed, and I want to say this to you. When the governor gave me this opportunity, which is a privilege, about 5 months ago, the first call I made was to Tommy Haas, the chairman of the BLET. I called him. And I called him because I knew how important this issue is for us to address and fix, because they've been fighting for this for no less than 5 years. Governor Murphy said to me, your first priority is to get this done. So we did it. And in fact, we got a deal done. They voted it down, their choice. But what I'm saying to you is, this doesn't have to be rocket science. We can get there. We can get a deal done. We can get a deal done that is fair to them and fiscally responsible to us. That's all we're trying to do. I will never leave the negotiating table. I've never left the negotiating table. In fact, when we ended last night, we ended on a very conciliatory note, despite what's being said out there, that we're going to get back together when we have something to put across each other, and I'm waiting for them to do just that. So I want you to know we are going to handle the strike from our standpoint very methodically, calmly, and address the problems as they come up. At the same time, at the governor's very deep involvement in these negotiations, we're going to get to a solution that is fair and fiscally responsible. That is the game plan. There's nothing else to it. Thank you, Governor.
Thank you, Chris. Just to add to Chris's point, remember, and Chris went through this last night, we not only have buses, we have the path, we have ferries, we have light rail, all of which are being deployed aggressively. Secondly, and Chris literally left the press conference last night with a bunch of his colleagues and went out to MetLife. I think it's fair to say both the incoming and outbound traffic at the Shakira concert last night went really well. We're hoping for a similar experience tonight. She's got Pitbull with her tonight, for those of you watching out there, otherwise known as Armando. And just one question for you. You mentioned the national board last night and Sunday morning. Any color on that before we take questions?
Thank you, Governor. Sorry. Last Monday, the National Mediation Board asked us to come to Washington, to both parties, and to make sure we do a meeting. And we did. And that sort of kicked off a whole round of negotiations that went till late last night. They've now asked us to come back again on Sunday. We're going to do just that to make sure we do it. But I just want to be clear. I don't have to wait till Sunday. I actually saw Mark Wallace, the president of the BLAT, this morning at Penn Station. He was walking and I was walking, and we spent a few seconds talking, very, very polite, very normal conversation about how we're going to try to solve this problem together. So I want to convey this message that there isn't this acrimony that somehow gets projected in the media. When we are in the room together, we understand our mission, and I'm telling you right now, I am fully committed at Governor Murphy's direction to get this deal done, but it has to be fair to them, but it has to be fiscally responsible.
Well said. One other question. I'm doing the first two questions here. You can channel them through me. Any comment about other unions within NJ Transit in terms of their posture and profile today, if you don't mind?
I'll say that we have said to any union member at New Jersey Transit, if they want to come to work, we welcome them to come to work, and they have been coming to work, and they are doing the stuff they're supposed to be doing, and that shows a sense of their commitment to New Jersey Transit's mission. And I think that should be applauded. This isn't something to be vilified for, and we appreciate it and will continue to work. And I want to emphasize what the governor said. The men outside in orange shirts, not transit men, but the other men, and the locomotive engineers, want to get back to work, and we want them to get back to work. That is the entire mission here, because ultimately we want the 350,000 daily riders to be able to use the mass transit system that they rely on.
Like any labor action like this, not only is it a real burden and challenge for our commuters, it ultimately is a burden and challenge for those guys out there and their families. So it's in all of our interests to get to a resolution here, and we are wide open for business to do that. Again, it's got to meet those two objectives: fair to them and fiscally responsible for us. We believe that a deal is there, and God willing, that will come to fruition. With that, we'll take a couple of quick questions. Brenda. It is Brenda.
Very fascinating and difficult trial to be a part of.
Yeah, and now that jury goes into the weekend with this emotional imprint. So definitely a standout start for the prosecution.
I'll let Chris address that. It's a very good question, and we did hit it last night, but we should hit it again this morning. The difference between getting this right and wrong, I mentioned this in passing last night, is a difference between single-digit to low double-digit millions of dollars on the one hand versus 9-digit millions of dollars on the other hand. The former is within our purview, within Chris's and my purview to be able to handle. The latter is in the category of blowing up our fiscal reality at NJ Transit, which we cannot allow to happen. Chris, do you mind addressing?
Yes, sir. I think, let me try to frame it this way. These are incredibly complex agreements, right? If the structure of the agreement is focused on locomotive engineers and things that they want to change in work rules and they want to give back in work rule savings, then it becomes a locomotive engineer contract. If it looks and feels like it's anything other than that, this is, somebody asked me, are these so-called Me Too clauses consistent in every union contract? The answer is yes. So this isn't just a unique thing for New Jersey Transit. So all we're trying to do is solve for this very important issue of wages that the union has asked for, but in the foundation that the governor talked about, fair and fiscally responsible, is grounded in the structure of the contract as well, because we have to make sure all the concessions we're asking for are locomotive engineer concessions, and all the changes we're producing that'll give them this increase are locomotive specific wage increases, if that makes sense.
By the way, we gotta get a different title for this category here. Just want to get that off my chest here. I'm going to hand this one to Chris.
Yeah, yes, sir. If done incorrectly, or done correctly, it doesn't matter, forget intent for 1 second. Every union, regardless, by the way, of New Jersey Transit or not, this happens at the Turnpike, this happens in firemen, this happens in police, this happens in teachers. In general, that's my understanding, there is what is called a side letter that basically informs a process by which it triggers this clause. And what I am suggesting is, and it is not, think about it from a union's perspective and why they would need a letter like that. If they were first in the door and they made a deal, and a few months later somebody else comes in the door and makes another deal that looks and feels a lot richer for doing basically the same things that these folks are doing, it's meant to protect them. So think about it that way. So it was meant to bring some level of equity, fairness, and parity for going first, if you will. So all we're saying is if our intent is to solve this union's very specific sort of ask, we've said to them, let's put stuff on the table, concession.
Well, it is one of the fiercest rivalries in Major League Soccer. The Hudson River Derby is back tomorrow. New York City FC hosts the New York Red Bulls at Citi Field for the first meeting between the clubs this season. But both teams are headed into the matchup with something to prove. So joining us to preview this matchup is Dax McCarty, former Red Bulls player and studio analyst for Major League Soccer. Welcome. Good morning.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so let's get into this weekend. It marks the first Hudson River Derby of the season. Can you talk a little bit about the rivalry and then maybe get into the moods going into this matchup?
Yeah, the rivalry is absolutely fantastic. I was lucky enough to be part of it back in my playing days, my playing career. It's the battle for New York, right? Is New York red or blue? The supporters get really into it. The rivalry has a little bit of ferocity about it that you don't typically get from a normal regular season MLS game. And both teams come into this game struggling a little bit.
I can see clearly now. Clearly, CBS Mornings.
Weekdays on CBS.
Yeah!
Tony, Coming? No, I'm gonna stick around for an hour.
CBS Mornings Plus with Adriana Diaz and Tony DeCopel, right after CBS Mornings.
It's just like mornings.
Plus fun.
Politics isn't a game.
When do consumers actually get to touch and feel a difference in their lives?
Politics is about policy.
So you would encourage Democrats to work with Donald Trump on an issue like healthcare?
I'm a voracious consumer of information, and I'm impatient. I don't like to be spun.
Do you know if there are active terror cells in the United States right now?
To be moderator of Face the Nation means bringing the most powerful stakeholders to the table to become better informed.
When you need your sports news all the time,
We've got breaking news to bring to you.
CBS Sports HQ gives you a snapshot of all the sports that matter to you.
Big news coming out of the NFL. A lot of movement in the rankings this week.
With highlights
What a finish at the final round of play.
and in-depth analysis.
Can they three-peat? Tony Romo joins the conversation.
What can you say about this game?
When you need your sports in a snap,
We're bringing you that breaking news right here on HQ.
find it on CBS Sports HQ. Streaming free anywhere you are.
While America's relaxing policies around social media and the internet, Germany is cracking down on lies and vitriol online.
How do people react when you take their phones from them?
They are shocked.
Which approach makes more sense? Plus, Timothy Chalamet only on 60 Minutes.
Don't miss true crime anytime you want, anywhere you go with the 48 Hours podcast. Real crimes,
Like a John Grisham novel come to life.
real lives.
He pointed a gun to me and said, "This is the day you die." And he shot me.
Real justice.
There's some questions that have to be asked and need to be answered.
I'm an innocent man, and I hope the whole world can see it now.
Catch the latest episodes. Listen to 48 Hours on Apple Podcasts.
The all-new CBS Evening News every weeknight.
This is CBS.
Welcome back, everyone. We want to look through the big stories we're following for you right now. The man who stabbed famed author Salman Rushdie is set to be sentenced in a New York courtroom today. The jury found Hadi Matar guilty of attempted murder and assault earlier this year. He was convicted of stabbing Rushdie during a lecture back in 2022. That attack left the author blind in one eye. The district attorney says he's seeking the maximum 25-year prison sentence. Doctors in Pennsylvania saved a baby's life with the world's first personalized gene editing therapy. The 9.5-month-old boy was born with a rare genetic disorder. Half of all babies born with it die within their first week of life. Doctors and scientists at Children's Hospital of Philadelphia gave the baby an infusion tailored specifically to him and his mutation. They say therapy has partially reversed his condition and lessened his chances of brain damage or even death. Doctors say they need to continue monitoring him in the long term to watch how the treatment is working. And the Department of Homeland Security has requested 20,000 National Guard troops to help with the president's immigration crackdown. Officials are telling CBS News these troops would help law enforcement with logistics and operations at the border. The Defense Department is still reviewing that request. There are already nearly 9,000 troops at the border as the Trump administration expands its use of the military to support its immigration efforts. And the Department of Homeland Security and Secret Service are now investigating this man. It's former FBI Director James Comey. It's all over a post that he shared, then deleted on Instagram, which showed seashells in the sand forming the numbers 86 and 47. Federal officials say the post was meant to incite violence against President Trump. Comey says he just thought it was a political statement and he is against violence. CBS News Department of Justice reporter Jake Rosen joins us now with more on this Friday. Jake, great to see you. Help us understand why this, what Comey says was a benign post, is actually being viewed as a threat that could come with ramifications.
Well, that's right, Errol. 86 in kind of informal language could mean, if you work in a restaurant setting, right, to kind of take something off the menu, cross it out. In a more sinister setting, think about maybe a mob movie or some kind of, more aggressive tone. It could mean to 86 as in take something out, right? Also, potentially could be interpreted as digging a grave, right? 8 foot wide, 6 foot deep. That's certainly what the Trump administration seized on last night when this was first posted by Comey before it was taken down. They say that it's a direct threat against the president. President Trump responded to it in an interview with another network that aired overnight and early this morning, in which he said Comey knew exactly what he was posting, despite his statement that it was just a political message and obviously there was no intent of violence behind it. He said it's up to Attorney General Pam Bondi to decide what to do with that. However, obviously people who are in support of Comey's political message, not necessarily obviously the threat of violence, say that it would be obviously an infringement on his free speech rights to just post something like that without any kind of more direct threat of violence against the president.
Yeah, what a bizarre moment. I want to turn to a different topic with you now. The judge in Kilmar Abrego Garcia's case is hearing arguments today over the government's justification to withhold information about him. What are we expecting to hear in court today?
Well, after a couple of weeks of explosive hearings, Errol, there really has been no movement on this case in the last couple of weeks because the judge ordered some discovery or fact-finding in the case. The Department of Justice says that it's answered all the questions it can and is invoking some privileges, including state secret privileges. Attorneys for Abrego Garcia have said that those answers are not substantial enough and that they've been stonewalled, citing a court filing. They are asking this judge to grant further depositions, including potentially talking to someone at the White House with more direct knowledge about what efforts either have been underway or could be underway to return the man. However, we've seen President Trump, Caroline Leavitt, and Secretary of Homeland Security Kristi Noem all say that they cannot bring him back.
All right, Jake Rosen in our D.C. bureau. Jake, thank you for that. The House Budget Committee is meeting this morning to finalize the GOP's budget reconciliation bill. Key issues remain among lawmakers, including major cuts to Medicaid and state and local tax deductions. CBS News congressional correspondent Nicole Killian is speaking with Representative Steve Scalise right now. Let's jump in and listen.
Look, we're all in agreement on the reforms we want to make. We want to have work requirements. We want to phase out a lot of these green subsidies. How quickly can you get it done? And it's not as quickly as saying you just turn it off tomorrow. Some things the administration does have to actually create a process to implement it, and we want to make sure that the Trump administration has the time they need while pushing them as fast as possible. So those are the conversations we're having, and we're making a lot of progress.
Have you spoken to the president at all?
Do you expect the president to weigh in?
The president's been following all this very closely. I know he's coming back from a foreign trip, so he's going to be actively engaged, as he has the whole way through this process.
Do you want the committee to work today?
I'd like the committee to keep doing its work, and they are. I'm glad they started today. I know there were some questions yesterday of, the committee might be canceled. We didn't want that to happen, and they met. And I appreciate Chairman Arrington's aggressive approach, too. Chairman Arrington wants to keep this bill moving. There's going to be work to be done in the Rules Committee. We already knew that. Issues like SALT are still going to be worked through the weekend. We're having conversations as we go through the weekend to resolve SALT. That's going to be addressed in the Rules Committee. So there were already some items that we were going to take up when Rules meets. These are